And now, my brothers and sisters, for this first time in the new year, for this first time for this preacher standing in this wonderful church, is preaching time. And I thank God Almighty for another precious preaching moment. I'm going to ask you to join me for a moment of prayer as we invite God's intercession for the preaching of God's precious word. Most gracious God, preach. Come now, God, in the form of your Holy Spirit and preach your word for your people. We give you thanks, God. We give you honor, God. We give you praise, God, for all you've done in our past. And dear God, we're believing with optimism. We're believing with hope. We're believing in courage in our future. So now, dear God, please give us a word of liberation. Dear God, please give us a word of inspiration. And dear God, please give those of us that need it a word of compassion and love. We love you, we praise you, we adore you. We surrender all to your name. These blessings and all of us we ask in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus the Christ. And let the church say, amen, amen, amen. It is preaching time. And I'm going to ask you to join me, please, in the book of Psalms. The very last division. The 150th division of the book of Psalms. The 150th Psalm. I'm going to be reading from the New Revised Standard Version of the Holy Bible. If you have it, say, if you need me to hold on, say hold on. All right. The 150th Psalm, 6 verses. I'll be reading again from the New Revised Standard Version of the Holy Bible. Praise the Lord. Praise God in his sanctuary. Praise him in his mighty firmament. Praise him for his mighty deeds. Praise him according to his surpassing greatness. Praise him with trumpet sound. Praise him with lute and harp. Praise him with tambourine and dance. Praise him with strings and pipe. Praise him with clanging cymbals. Praise him with loud clashing cymbals. Let everything that breathes praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Somebody say praise. Praise the Lord. My brothers and my sisters, for just a few moments today in this preaching moment, I want to talk with you from the topic. We all have a part to play. We all have a part to play. We all have a part to play. Yesterday afternoon, before meeting many of you here, and I again want to say thank you for coming out at 1 o'clock. I think I mentioned I had the pleasure of spending some time with the Duncans. Brother Ben Duncan and his wonderful wife, Jackie. It was a special honor to be there with them because, what you may not know, I graduated from St. Augustine High School with their son, Ben. We were classmates and very good friends. As we were sitting there talking, we shared a lot about St. Aug, and I think I mentioned to you earlier, I left with some goodies because I had some gumbo. I want to talk a little bit now about St. Aug, and I'm going to come back at the end of the sermon to talk about the gumbo. Now the old saying goes, if you know anybody that went to St. Aug, you can always tell somebody from St. Aug, you just can't tell them much. I remember our class motto. We used to say, class of 89, simply divine. If it ain't purple and gold, it ain't cold, huh? And I finally remember some of my friends, as we were sitting there talking, many memories came back that I hadn't thought about in quite some time, and I think reflectively about our matriculation from 9th to 12th grade, and how so many young men came into their own as teenagers. Many of us, myself included, there's a caveat to that, but myself included, were affiliated with the best band in the land, the St. Augustine High School Marching Country. That means for many of us, there was a gentleman named Edwin Harrell Hampton, affectionately known as Mr. Ham, who made a difference in quite a few people's lives. Now, just like Mr. Ham had a nickname, many of the people we talked about yesterday at the Duncan table had nicknames too. Now, I say this in jest. Ben, their son, who I'm sure you know, Ben's about this tall now, we called him Big Ben, okay? We had my friend Conroy. Conroy was a very light-skinned brother. We used to call Conroy White. We had my friend Euless. Euless is now a preacher. I'm sure Euless is going to be by here at Historic St. James at some point. We used to call you Soup, or Super U. And my friend Reuben. Reuben would crack jokes and laugh at him himself, and we called Rube Silly Rube. There was me in the equation also. I was blessed to be the student body president as well as the captain of the speech and debate team. I was JR, or oftentimes after the cartoon, Augie Dog. Now, we all came from different walks of life. We all lived in different parts of town, and in many regards, we all were very, very different people. But we came together because we loved St. Augustine High School, and for many of us, we came together around the love of something that was so popular here in the city of New Orleans and beyond, the band. Now, when I was at the Duncans yesterday, as we were talking about my senior year in that band, we talked about Big Ben, who senior year used to carry the school band that said St. Augustine High School, New Orleans, Louisiana, up in the front. We talked about my friend Conroy, White. White senior year had a saber. You see the people sometimes in the parade with the swords, and White used to march with his saber. We talked about my friend Euless. Euless, who had senior year, became a section leader for the percussions. Euless had the cymbals, and he used to supervise the drums. And me, I still can't play an instrument. Lord knows I can't sing to save my soul, but I had the microphone. I was the voice of the marching hundred. Parade season was always fun, but the magic, my brothers and my sisters, went down at halftime of the football games. Now I'm going to ask you to stay with me for just a moment. This is not a hard beat to keep, but I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. I'm going to do like this, and I'm going to ask you to keep this beat for a second. Can you do that? All right, come on, just 1 second.
Offbeat. Offbeat.
You got it? Okay. All right, so Mr. Ham now would look at my friend Reuben, who became a drum major. Silly Rube was a drum major. We said Silly Rube had the stick, right? Mr. Ham would look at Reuben, and Mr. Ham at halftime would nod his head, and Reuben would grab his whistle. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And all of a sudden, everybody would start going, huh? There was Ben in the front. Ben would have the band that said St. Augustine High School, and he'd start moving. There was Conroy. Conroy was marching with his saber from side to side. There was Euless moving with the cymbals. Then all of a sudden, everybody was doing their thing to play their part, and Mr. Ham would look at me, microphone in hand. He would nod his head, and I would start. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for your halftime entertainment, let's throw down to the sounds of the best band in the land. And we went on. And we would march off the field with the same drama that we marched on. Now the thing about being in or being associated with St. Aug's band was that everybody knew you because you were in the band. In other words, everybody knew the individual because of the contribution the individual made to the whole. Because of the individual contribution to something much larger than themselves. Although we were all very proud individuals, we were proud to make a contribution to a greater good known as the Marching Hundred. That means at halftime in the football games, nobody except maybe your parents came to see somebody who was necessarily carrying a flag. Nobody came to see somebody who was carrying a saber. Nobody came to see somebody who had cymbals. And trust me when I say nobody came to see the announcer of the band. But people would come to see all of those individual parts come together to make something special known as the Marching 100. What I'm trying to say is that we were all unlike one another, but we all came together because we all had a part to play. Now watch this. My part could have been Ben's part. Ben's part could have been Euless's part. Euless's part could have been Conroy's part, and none of us could have played Silly Rube's part. But we all came together, my brothers and sisters, making greater good of the whole because we all had a part to play. When we look at today's text now, as we're coming together on this first Sunday of the new year, we're picking up where we left off because we're taking things now to a higher level. This is the second in a two-part series from the Psalms. You will recall that last week, to close out the year, we preached from the 23rd Psalm, very popular resuscitation of Scripture, on the topic, the shepherd's house. Now, in emphasizing how we were all called on, just like David, to overcome some obstacles. We all are called on, particularly at the holidays when it's rough, to get through some things. We all are called on to get over the River Jordan in many ways, right? We talked about God being a God of provision, because there's provision in the house. We talked about God being a God of protection, because there's protection in the house. And we talked about God being a God of plentifulness, because there's plentifulness in the shepherd's house. Now this morning, as we move past those holidays, we as members of the church came together yesterday, here in 2016, and we made it possible. You made it possible by sacrificing of yourselves, sacrificing of your individuality, and giving into the community of a bigger picture called Historic St. James to make sure on this morning we would not be worshiping back in the fellowship hall, where we begin a new year with a new look, new opportunities, and new optimism by worshiping here in God's church. Somebody might say, God has brought me a mighty long way. It's time now, as we focused last week on individual relationships with God, it's time now to talk about our collective relationships with God. It's time to talk about our communal relationships with God, and it's time to build on the strength of those individual relationships, and I want to talk about the individual ministries of this church. I want to make this church, my brothers and sisters, the best church this side of heaven. Remember, we all, as members of this church, we all have a part to play. Now, when we look at this text now, called the 150th Psalm, the end of the book of Psalms, which some call the Psalter, this text is regarded as the doxology of the Psalter. Now that word doxology must sound familiar to you. We begin each and every worship service with the doxology. We close each and every worship service with the doxology. By definition, a doxology is a fundamental statement of belief, what we hold sacred here in our religion. Now, listen to me. I say listen. I'm not going to sing. That's not my gift. But listen to me say our doxology and think about what it means to you. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above, heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. In other words, at the beginning and at the end of each and every worship service, we talk about what we believe. That means we believe that God is the giver of all good and perfect gifts. It means we believe that our primary responsibility in this life as members of God's church is to lift up praise to God. It means that when we leave this life, when we go on up to the afterlife, we still are going to be praising God. It means that we believe in a triune God. God the Father, God the Son, and as the old folks say, the Holy Ghost. That pretty much sums up, I believe, everything in African Methodism that we believe. It's the same concept when we look at this text. This text is a doxology because the writer is telling us that our primary responsibility as the church is to praise God. Our primary responsibility in praising God is by using the gifts that God has given us to glorify God. That means that although God has gifted us all in different ways, although we may all come from different backgrounds, although we may all be from different strands of cloth, although we may all come from different parts of town, some uptown, some downtown, some front of town, some back of town, we all believe, my brothers and sisters, that we are all connected together, playing our part because we are members of God's church. why, as we begin this new year, coming together here in historic St. James, I'm asking each and every one of you to look deep inside. I'm asking each and every one of you to break with the ways of the past, to break with the silos of division, to break with the preparations and saying, I'm going to tear this paper apart. It's time to put that paper together. I'm asking you to look deep inside and determine what your gift is. Look deep inside and determine what part you want to play. Look deep inside and figure out what has God given to you, and so you can glorify God by giving it to the world through your church. Because guess what? We all have a part to play. Now listen to me now, historic St. James. When we look at this text shows us a commonality of inclusion and how things that may otherwise not be similar, not be connected, are brought together for a common cause. The text tells us about the trumpet playing its part. The text tells us about the harp playing its part. The text tells us about the lute playing its part, and it tells us about the cymbals playing their part. The text tells us that the tambourine plays its part, and that the dancers, those wonderful dancers, I'm going to will and bet we're going to have liturgical dancers in this church before long. The text tells us that the dancers play their part too. In other words, the text is telling us that everyone that God has gifted has a part to play. And when those individual parts come together for a common good, they make for an amazing whole. That means here now in 2016, I'm about to bring this close to home, I'm asking the stewards to play their part. I'm going to call on the lay organization to play its part. I'm going to call on the Sons of Allen to play its part, the trustees to play their part, the young adult ministry to play its part, and the choir. Don't just play your part. I need you to make a joyful noise unto the Lord so that when people come in this sanctuary, they feel the very presence of the divine. It's up to us to use all of the gifts that God has given us to glorify God's precious name, because we all, my brothers and sisters, have a part to play. Now this morning, I promise not to talk long, but I want to hit three very important points with respect to this church, with respect to this text, and with respect to us all coming together as one as we begin a new year. I want to talk about the individuality of your part. I want to talk about the community of your part, and I want to talk also about the diversity of your part. Individuality, community, and diversity. As we start off this new year by having worship back in this beautiful church, I'm asking you to think about the existing ministries of this church, but also think optimistically about the future, about new ministries to come. Because remember, I have a part, you have a part, we all have a part to play. Now the text speaks about individuality because it focuses on the individual instruments that are used to praise God. The individual instruments are the building blocks of this biblical text, just like the individual players, it is Sunday, right, are the building blocks of a football team. Now, I'm from New Orleans. I'm proud to have gone to St. Augustine. Like many of you, I'm a part of the Who Dat Nation. Love me some boys in the black and gold. Win, lose, or draw, I'm rooting for the Saints on Sunday. Huh? Now, like all of us here, give me some of that. Now, like all of us here, I'm very proud of all we did just a couple of years ago when we won the Super Bowl. At the individual level, we had some wonderful players, and those players came together to make a wonderful team, but individually, each one of those players had a part to play. Let me break it down for you. Drew Brees plays quarterback. That's his individual position, and that's the part he plays by contributing to a wonderful team. Marcus Colson is a receiver. That's the part he plays by contributing to a wonderful team. Even with all of the individual hype that goes into winning the Heisman Trophy in college, Brother Mark Ingram has given all that to the side because he too is a part of a wonderful team. Each one of those individual players that suit up in the black and gold are first individuals, and those individuals play their respective parts. What I'm trying to say is that Drew Brees doesn't play tight end, Marcus Colson doesn't play running back, and Mark Ingram does not play quarterback. So to accomplish the common goal of having a winning team, I want to have a winning church. To accomplish the common goal of having a winning team, everybody has got to know their position, everybody has got to know what they're supposed to be doing, and everybody has got to cover their parts. In other words, we all have a part to play. That means here at Historic St. James, if we are going to restore this church to its greatness, We all are going to have to play our individual parts by being a part of a contributing team, a winning team, and I'm asking each individual ministry to play its part as part of a winning team too. Dr. King may have said it best. When he talked about individuality, he said, be the best individual you can be. If you're going to be a street sweeper, sweep street cleans. But don't just sweep streets clean. Sweep streets so that when you're dead and gone, people will come in awe and stand at your grave and say, here lies the world's best street sweeper. Somebody who took pride in what they were called to do. You understand what I'm saying this morning, Historic St. James. It's new chances, it's new opportunities. So, if you're going to be a part of the lay organization, Sister Diane, I'm asking you to be the best member of the laity you can be. If you're going to be a part of the WMS, I'm asking you to be the best missionary you can be. If you're going to be a trustee, I'm asking you to be the best trustee you can be. If you're going to be a stewardess, be the best stewardess you can be. And if you're going to be in the choir, again, make a joyful noise unto the Lord so everybody can turn around the world and sing, God is in his holy temple. We all, my brothers and sisters, in coming together, regardless of what you decide to do, regardless of what you're called to do, individually, I'm asking you and the ministries you choose to identify with, play your part, because guess what? We all have a part to play. Now, there's also community in this text. When we look at the text now, in addition to individuality, it also speaks of community because it speaks about individual instruments coming together to form a united community to praise God. Community builds upon individuality, and individuality grows into community. So in talking again about our boys in the black and gold, Drew Brees came to the Saints as an individual. His individual status, however, has given way to the greater good of him being a part of a community known as the Saints. Marcus Colson came to the Saints as an individual. He now is a part of a community known as a team. And again, with all of the hype that goes into winning a Heisman Trophy, Mark Ingram is no longer just an individual, but he's part of a community because he's focused on contributing to a winning team. Although each individual has a part to play, if the greater good is to be accomplished, the individual must grow from their silo of individuality and grow into the greater concept of community. Just imagine for a moment. 3 piles. 3 individual piles here before you. I want you to imagine a pile of bricks. I want you to imagine a pile of wood, and I want you to imagine a pile of tools. Individually, each one of these piles has a part to play, but it takes them coming together to make the concept of community accomplish anything. The old saying goes that a brick wants to be more than just a brick, it wants to be a part of a castle. So if you take those bricks individually, they are simply bricks. But if you bring them together with mortar and prop them up against a support system of wooden 2x4s brought together by the tools of a carpenter, you have just built a wall. If you continue building walls, individual walls, pretty soon you have the community of a building. If you continue building the community of a building, soon you will have the connection of a full community. That means, my brothers and sisters, we all are called on individually here at Historic St. James to do something, but we all are part of something bigger than just ourselves as this individual church at 222 North Roman. We are part of a community. That means, remember, we're part of a community with Union Bethel. We're part of a community with Historic St. Peter. We're part of a community with St. Peter Carrollton. We're part of a community with St. Paul. We're part of a community with St. Luke, and we're part of a community with Bethel on Caffin Avenue. We're part of a community with Union Chapel up in Kentwood and with Turner Chapel out in Greensboro. When we all come together individually, Historic St. James, we can make this the best church this side of heaven, but we still are a part of a very proud community of black people known as African Methodists. We all have a part to play. Now today's text also, in addition to speaking of individuality and speaking of community, today's text, my brothers and sisters, talks about the beauty of a thing called diversity. When we look at the text now, the symbols are not clashing with the harp. The symbols are complementing the harp. The harp doesn't clash with the lute. The harp complements the lute. The tambourine doesn't clash with the dancers. It complements the dancers. When we take those individual instruments into a community that praises God, we still celebrate who they are. We still celebrate the value that each and every one of them brings. That's the very essence of diversity. If different parts of the whole come together on one accord, appreciating their individuality, but focused on that concept of community, we can celebrate in the richness of diversity. And that's only possible when you secure in what you were called to do and you know how to play your part. You're not worried about who else playing their part. That's how we can celebrate the inclusiveness of diversity. Let me try to bring it home. Again, that means lay organization. We want a secure lay organization that's going to work with a secure pastor. We want a diversity of trustees that will work with stewards. We want diversity in the WMS that will work with the YAMS, and we want the diversity of an outreach ministry that's always going to work with our sons of Allen. Like the writer of the text, I'm asking you, my brothers and sisters, to focus here in 2016, to commit here in 2016, to bring together individuality, to bring together to community, and to celebrate the richness of diversity that is historic St. James African Methodist Episcopal Church. Because we all, each and every individual in here, each and every ministry represented, we all have a part to play to make this the best church this side of heaven. It's a new year, there are new opportunities, there are new horizons, and I'm asking you to commit to play your part. Now, I promised I wouldn't keep you too long, so I want to close out by telling you a story. I mentioned to you yesterday that at the Duncans we talked a little bit about St. O, and I mentioned to you I left with a gift, some gumbo. Gumbo is probably my favorite food in the world. Last week, my mother was here, of course, visiting for Christmas. I certainly appreciated that, and I appreciated the very, very kind gesture. Tennille is here sitting with Michelle and Mason, Michelle's sister Tennille. Tennille was kind enough with my mother in town to make gumbo. Now, Tennille and Michelle are from Arkansas, so Tennille gave me the disclaimer. Now, Jay, you know this is only my second pot of gumbo. It's okay, the gumbo was delicious. But Tennille and I got together in the kitchen as Michelle and my mother were there talking. And I shared with her a little bit about my recipe for gumbo. Now, yeah. So as we stood there in the kitchen, I told her a little bit about the things I like to put in the gumbo. Stay with me a minute on this now. I like hen. A lot of people like chicken. I like hen because hen is a little tougher in its consistency. And hen, even when it gets tender, it will not shred apart in the gumbo. So I start the day before and I will boil up my hen, right? So when my hen gets tender, I put that on the side because that hen is going to go in the gumbo. And the water that you boil the hen in, that becomes my stock. I'm going to use that right in the gumbo too, right? Now, the next day, when you fast forward, the day I usually make my gumbo, I told Tennille I may take some frozen okra, put it in a pot to boil. Thank you so much. I may put it in a pot to boil, just enough to take the slime off, while starting with the main ingredient. You got to get that powder together there, which is got to make your roux. Now, after getting a good roux, I put in a good heaping spoon of filet and the okra. The slime is off it at this point now, right? Add the okra, add in some nice seasons along with that stock from the hen, and then you are ready in about 2 hours for the basis of what's going to be. It's a pretty good gumbo. That means that after adding in the shrimp, after adding in the crab claws, after adding in the crab meat, and after adding in a little bit more filet, Michelle loves filet, after adding in a little bit more filet, putting in some salt and pepper to taste, maybe a little bit crab oil to give it some kick, pretty soon you are ready with some of the best restaurant-made, homemade gumbo. Now, the main point of the conversation I was having with Tennille, I didn't tell you, we talked about the sausage. She was a little concerned about the consistency of the, I said, baby, no, you pre-cook those sausage on the side, you put that sausage on in, that eliminates the rest of that problem, right? What I'm trying to say is that when we sit down to eat gumbo, we can appreciate the individuality of the gumbo, because I love the shrimp. We can appreciate the individuality of the gumbo because I love the crab meat. We can appreciate the individuality of the gumbo because I love the sausage. But when it all comes together, remember now, people will travel the world around to come to New Orleans for some gumbo. But nobody says I'm coming to New Orleans to get some shrimp. Nobody says I'm coming to New Orleans to get some sausage. But people will, and nobody says I'm coming to New Orleans to get some hen. But people will say when you bring that all together in a rich community, stir in the pot, I'm coming to New Orleans to get some gumbo. So we're talking about appreciating the individuality. We're talking about appreciating the community. And when they all come together, I'm sure the shrimp knows what the shrimp is doing in the gumbo, so the shrimp doesn't have to worry about the hen. The hen knows what the hen is doing in the gumbo, so the hen doesn't have to worry about the sausage. Everybody has a part to play in this gumbo by making it some wonderful tasting gumbo. What are you saying, preacher? The same story of the gumbo, the same story of the marching hundred, the same story of this wonderful church is the same story of the text we're preaching from today. We all, my brothers and sisters, have a part to play. I'm asking you during the course of this new year, dig deep inside yourself